Ow!
Greetings, YouTube. This is Dak Crash, better known as Brandon, and welcome to another Quantum Leap review. Alright, so before I begin, I know that those of you who've been listening to me know that I get a little spoiler heavy, but really, this has a massive spoiler at the end, and so I just want to give everyone fair warning. So, we are now up to episode, was it 4 or 5? Episode 5, titled Salvation or Bust. And so, in this one, Sam has leaped into the days of the Old West. Um, don't know the exact date that he had leaped into. I get some of my information from whatever they post on Wikipedia just to jog my memory. But I know this in the 1800s, in like around the 1840s or 50s, probably around the Gold Rush era. So he leaps into the life of an aged gunslinger named Diego de la Cruz, into a town called Salvation, which was originally a mining boom town, but the gold vein dried up, and so they've fallen on hard times, and Union Pacific Railroad wants to buy that land, and so they, I guess, have hired some outlaws to drive those people out. The outlaws are headed by a guy named McDonough, Josiah McDonough. So what has happened is that Diego, the person Ben has leaped into, and I think I might have said Sam at the very beginning. If I did, I apologize. But Diego, the guy that Ben has leaped into, the guy's granddaughter had called him to that town, because whenever he leaps in, she's fussing at him over saying, "Oh, you're just leaving. You're gonna abandon us." And I think, and of course, from what Addison tells him, like in the original timeline, he convinced her to want to want to leave town, and that town got shut down, torn out, and the railroad goes through. And of course, this outlaw is kind of a mean hombre, and is everyone's terrified of him. So, and and Ben unfortunately is a pacifist, and he and Addison butt heads a little bit over that. And so, basically, this A plot is them trying to figure out a way to deal with the outlaws. It's a very classic Old West type plot. And whereas in the B plot, in the present day, what's going on with the Project Quantum Leap crew is that they have a surprise visitor from a senator on the project's oversight committee to try to find out what's really been going on, because they had been monitoring the energy output of the project and knew that they had some massive energy spikes, and of course that coincides with the time when Ben made his unauthorized leap. So she starts interviewing all the chief members of Project Quantum Leap, from Addison to Magic, even what's that lady's name? Jen, who's the head of security. She still needs a bigger part to play, though she did do a pretty interesting thing near the end of the episode. All the chief members of Project Quantum Leap are being interviewed, and she's asking them questions, and they're trying their best to be as evasive as possible. Addison just limits all her answers to yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. The security chief is just basically had turned complete bureaucrat, and basically saying, "Well, you need to get this in writing," and basically used every political trick that she knew to try to throw this person off the scent without really telling her anything. And was really funny was Ian's going full tech geek and using nothing but techno babble. Well, it makes sense if you understand computer jargon. I understand some, but he was trying to get this senator to not really understand. Unfortunately, as you would probably guess, that made the senator just more and more suspicious of what's going on. Meanwhile, however, in the A plot, when Addison's trying to suss out and figure out what Ben is there to do, and is trying to convince him that it may come down to violence, but Ben has leaped into a man who's way past his prime. He's an old man, maybe a former gunslinger, but Ben couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, and he tries to do it. One bullet ricochets and grazes his arm. So he's like, I'm no good as a gunslinger, and this guy is the kind of guy, the McDonough is the kind of guy who really doesn't listen to talk, listens to his fists. Even and things just kind of come to a head when De La Cruz's daughter, goes and I kept saying daughter, granddaughter, goes to try to take on the guy himself and just gets made into a captive. And so he wants to basically tell the people to, to just convince the people to get out of town. So he wants to go ahead and challenge the guy to a duel at sunrise. So it gets down to that kind of trope. And that kind of leads me to something about the episode, about how tropey it is, but I'll get to that in a moment. So basically, at the end, he manages to get the entire town to use their individual skills and his 21st century know-how to arrange a trap for this guy and his compadres, because the government, the U.S. Marshals, are offering a pretty massive award for his capture. It was $10,000, and in the 1800s, $10,000 was a ridiculous amount of money. This guy, Addison said the records, of course, from back then are a little spotty, but she knew that he had a laundry list of crimes, and it was only the crimes that they knew about. So this guy was a really bad man. So yeah, I guess the $10,000 was a pretty worthy reward. And what they would have done with the reward would say, okay, we capture this guy, we get the reward, and we go ahead and pay the railroad companies to go, find some other prospective route for the railroad. And so that is what he ends up doing with the town. They devise a pretty elaborate trap. The climax of that episode is actually pretty fun to watch, especially if you like westerns. However, that also kind of leads to the issues I have with this episode. The final events of the episode notwithstanding, which just blew me away, and I'll get to that. Is that, okay, you're dealing with an Old West type story. Of course, there are going to be tropes. But I think that they relied a little too heavily on that, to the point where, in the very beginning of the episode, I was like, oh, good Lord, is this that classic, bad guy threatens a town, stranger comes in and tries to, get rid of the bad guy? I mean, couldn't they have been a bit more creative? And yes, I know stories that take place in the Old West tend to follow certain very, very commonly used tropes, to the point that was the reason why Western movies back in the day finally faded in popularity. It's because you were basically telling the same set of stories over and over and over and over and over again. You saw one Western, you've seen them all, basically. Well, maybe about 2 or 3 Westerns, and you've seen them all. So I wish that they would have gotten out of that or tried to do something a little bit different. But the interesting thing was one thing it did do right is it really presented the people in that town in a very good way. It had good characterization for each of these people in the town. They might have been a bit on one level, but they got a little bit into the one level. So every person he met, they all had a story to tell about who they were, how they got there. The lady who ran the bar, she would never be able to. She was a black lady, and of course back then she would never even be able to get a bank loan. And now she was the sole proprietor of that saloon. One of the guys was he ran a foundry, and but that was the only thing he had, and the criminals tried to destroy the foundry. One of the guys was a deputy for the sheriff. And the sheriff and all the other guys got bought out by McDonough, and he was the only one who chose to stay. But he said, this was a place, I never, could be anything anywhere. I was always trying to be what everyone else wanted me to be. Here I can be what I want to be. And that was sort of the reason why, people liked the town and stayed there and wanted to keep it. And even the guy who was treating his wounds was younger. It must have been Chinese. And he was a kid who was, treating his gun graze, and his I think it was his uncle, he wanted to start a restaurant, even though the guy was deaf from working in the mines and being exposed to all the TNT and whatnot. So each person had an interesting story to tell, and I do like the fact that that episode really managed to put all that together. Even though, like I said, they were using a Wild West milieu to tell sort of a tropey story. Interestingly enough, that if they're following how Sam was able to time travel in the original, he could only time travel within his own lifetime. But if you remember in one of the previous episodes, they did explain that he was doing something unique with the time traveling to where he actually could travel. Ben actually could travel outside of his own lifetime. The only episodes in the original Quantum Leap that were not between the 50s and the present back then were the episode where he and Al switched places and they ended up in the 1940s, and one episode where he leaped into life. I think it was of a soldier in the Civil War, because that soldier was, I think, Sam's great-great-grandfather. And the only reason why he was able to travel that far back was because of the genetic connection he shared with his great-great-grandfather. So, but in this case, they're using, like I said, a completely different mechanism to travel outside of Ben's own lifetime. So it does, bring one to wonder, what's going to happen next? How far back are they going to travel in this story? And I actually do kind of like that, because it does give more room for more stories and scenarios. However, I think that one of the issues with this story, outside of the whole Wild West milieu, is that the story, the stories are all, about really special people doing really special things. Well, okay, in this case, the guy who Ben leaps into is, a former gunslinger, and he might have been a somebody in an earlier part of his life, but not anymore. But still, it felt more like, some people who are extraordinary doing extraordinary things. Whereas in the original Quantum Leap, most of the people who Ben leaped into were pretty much average Joes. And a lot of the things that happened in each episode revolved around elements of their lives that were very personal. Family, friends, people that they knew, every now and again, even complete strangers. But they were very, very compact and very slice of life almost. Whereas this one, I think the writers are trying to aim a bit too high. And I really wish they would dial it down just a tad. That way it'll feel, Ben's adventures and times will feel more like what Sam was going through in the original series. These were everyday people. So, but that's just my little complaint about it. I mean, otherwise the B plot was kind of interesting, just with that senator, sticking her nose in the whole area, and you kind of figured that this was going to happen sooner or later. But what was really kind of interesting was at the end when she had spoken to Magic and, well, kind of basically told Magic that she pretty much figured it out, and that she was going to go and report this, that there was an unauthorized leap, and they were probably going to, their jobs were on the line. They might have been replaced by other people, and, well, what happened in that particular case was that Jen, the chief of security, had dug up some stuff on this senator and gave it to Magic, and it was some stuff that he could pull on her to give him an option to tell her to not to stop this witch hunt, or else we'll just let this become public, just to have a quote unquote nuclear option. And well, in the end, what was surprising was that Magic did use that option, but not in the way that that was expected. Instead of using it as a threat, he explained that in this girl's past, they had gotten in a wreck for drunk driving, and it killed her brother. Now, the police report said that the brother was driving, but excuse me, the news report said the brother had been driving, but the police report said that it was she was the one who had been driving, and she didn't want that information to get public. And he said, "Look, quantum, the unauthorized though the leap may be," he said, it shows that the time travel technology does work. We can change history for the better. I said, what if we might be able to go back in time and change what happened to your brother? So you're gonna try to shut us down now? And so she realized, okay, maybe she might be making a big mistake, and she went on ahead on her merry way, and hopefully won't be ringing any bells and it back in DC. Even though Ian said, we don't have the technology to make such a precise leap. Magic said, yeah, but she doesn't know that. So I thought that was a pretty interesting way to resolve the whole issue. So nothing really major has been going on in the B plot this week, but in the A plot, like I said, the final is series of events was really exciting. Not just to, seeing what the townspeople all working together to capture these guys. It was kind of funny because the whole thing that they did, when they tried to fight, was just like a huge mousetrap, which reminded me of something Addison had told Ben, and he said, all you need to do is build a better mousetrap. And sure enough, it was like the most complex mousetrap, which got McDonough and his guys captured. I could describe it, but it would take too long. You just watch the episode. It's really fun to watch, especially the ending series of events. But here's the thing, and this leads to the big spoiler that of the thing that happens at the very end of the episode. Ben is celebrating with everyone in town, their victory, and getting this guy put in jail and got the reward and whatnot. And he's talking to Addison. And by the way, he does. There's a lot of talk between Ben and Addison throughout the episode because Ben now remembers her. Even though his memories aren't specific, he knows that they were together. And she comes back in wearing a ring. And by the way, Magic did say, well, now that he knows who you are and in your relationship, yeah, we do need to go ahead and just, tell him, everything we can. It may jog his memory. Because with what had been going on with Janice, and just taking information out of the Quantum Leap computers, they have to figure out, what's going on. And the sooner Ben's memory comes back, the better he might be to help them, and even more willing to help them now that he has learned to trust Addison. So anyway, he's talking with Addison at the end, and even Addison gives him a little down low on a vein of copper not too far away from the town, so could get the economy back up and running. And then right before he leaps, some guy comes up to him and he says, I know who you are, Ben Sung from the year 2022. He tells him, stop chasing me around. Yeah, he's a time traveler. He says, stop following me, and he's all angry. And then Ben is like who's this? And then he leaps, and my jaw is just on the floor. He met another time traveler. Now, it could be one of two things. I just thought about this because my brain kind of froze when I saw that, and I was like, what the? Oh my God, And I was just, finally when I could think again, I was like, is that an evil leaper? So I was thinking maybe it's an evil leaper. But then again, I remember somewhere when I learned that, okay, when Al sees Sam every time he goes to the imaging chamber, he's not seeing Sam as he is. He sees the person he's leaped into, just the same as everybody else. And we're seeing some guy who looks like a Hispanic dude shouting at Ben, telling me, I know who you are, stop following me. And I'm like, oh my God, is that Sam? I mean, it's just a hypothesis, but I mean, it's either that or it's another time traveler, definitely. So I mean, I'm thinking either it's an evil leaper, which that would make an interesting thickening to this story's plot, or it's Sam. And I'm just sitting there, just silently screaming inside my head, "Oh my God!" So, as To me, this episode really was kind of a downgrade, and I really don't. I hate saying that because the prior episode wasn't as good as the first three, and this one was a little bit less than the first. At least it started off that way. It got pretty good near the end, especially in the with the whole deal how they managed to capture these guys. I thought it was really clever and fun, and it really did turn the story around. So I could give this one maybe about a 6.5. I was gonna give it like a 5 or a 6. But like I said, it redeemed itself in the end, especially with what happened at the end of that episode. Holy freaking crap! You guys got to see it just for that ending. Trust me, my describing it doesn't do the shock factor justice. Well, that's about all I've got to say for this episode. Like I said, I think the events at the end of the episode really saved it, because otherwise I felt that it was just kind of going into the tropiness, and I was just thinking, man, I was like, these writers need to step up their game, but they came through at the end, which really surprised me. And so, ladies and gentlemen, as I always say, this show is actually worth keeping around, really worth watching, and really, if you didn't know, and other people have been reviewing the show have said this, I got some news that it's been picked up for 6 more episodes for this season. And which shows that NBC not only has a lot of faith in the show, they really are hoping that more people watch it. They said it's got pretty good views on like streaming and whatnot, even though the reviews, like reviews, are not all that good, or they're more kind of on the meh level. And I'm hoping that it gets better over time. Like, they've had good episodes to show that this series has promise. So I'm hoping that more people will watch. I really found this episode enjoyable regardless. Especially, like I said, it picked up at the end. And I really hope that all of you guys out there who are on the fence about it will check it out and will keep with it. I've done other reviews of TV shows, and almost all of them haven't lasted longer than one season. Only exception is Defiance. So it's my hope that this one will last longer than just one season. And this bit of news about the new episodes being called for this present series, for this present this present season, really shows me, like I said, that I think NBC has a lot of faith in the series and really wants to see it, shine through, because they're showing a lot of respect to the original. So, like I said, that's all I have to say now, guys. Thank you very much for listening. As always, comment, rate, subscribe, and check out the show. And so, as always, guys, this is Dak Crash, better known as Brandon. As always, stay lucky and stay blessed. Take care.